Hi everyone, Greg from RPM Technik here, starting this week's video in the engine room, a bit like we did last week, because the 997.2 RS, which had an over rev on it and hence had the engine brought in here for strip down, has been stripped down. So it's not very often you get to see the internals of one of these, so good opportunity to basically show you some of the major parts that make up the mezger engine. So here we've got the crankcases. So in the middle of the crankcases, right in the heart of the engine, is where the crankshaft sits, which is this little fella here. So part of what makes these engines so well engineered is that these items are, well, beautifully finished, but very, very tough. So I recall reading that these were good for somewhere between 900 and 1,000 horsepower, and the engine only runs, I say only, 450 horsepower. So it just goes to show some of the tolerances that they built the car to. So hanging down off of the crankshaft are the conrods. So the conrods attached to the pistons, and the pistons obviously fly in and out of the bore, which we'll get a bit of B-roll for in a second. But when we say an over rev, what that means is where someone has gone from, say, a sixth gear and missed a shift and maybe pulled it straight into second. And what that does is once you've let the clutch out, everything meshes together and it puts such a force through the engine that it will cause something to break. And so most commonly what we will see is when that all meshes at very high RPM, the timing of the engine goes out because it's running too fast, and we'll see pistons and valves hitting each other. Now interestingly, it hasn't actually happened on this, so where we would see that normally is on the top of the piston, a little kiss from one of the valves. So we're still in sort of looking through this engine to find out where the issues are, but this is one of the timing chains, which again is really nicely engineered. But the timing chain effectively wraps around the engine, controls the camshafts, and just makes sure that everything is spinning at the right point. We can actually check on the computer what we call cam deviation, which shows how far out of sync it is, and there are actually actuators in the engine which will compensate for that, but past a certain point they can't help. So we've got camshaft here, oil pump. So the oil pump on the mezger engines is quite interesting. So normally on a wet sumped engine, you've got a sump pan at the bottom, which if ever you jump over a bridge and bash it against the floor and it leaks everywhere, you'll have seen. But mezger engines are dry sumped. So what that means is they have an oil tank on the back of the engine. The oil pump sucks the oil around, so in extreme G forces, it means that you don't have oil starvation either side of the engine. But the other big benefit of it is that because you don't have a big sump on the bottom of the engine, you can lower the centre of gravity of the whole car, which for racing, etc. is obviously beneficial. So yep, we've got oil pump here, we've got the cylinder heads here, which is where we've got the intake and exhaust valves. And we've also got the water pump here, which sits on the back of the engine, because obviously these are water-cooled engines. But it's amazing when you look at the internals inside them, how many similarities are shared between that and the air-cooled cars. So the mezger design has been running for many, many years. But Dave over my shoulder is the engine builder here, so he's probably been diligently listening to me warbling along, making sure all that was correct. So I haven't heard him shout just yet. I can see him grinning. But anyway, that's the internals of the mezger, and once we've ascertained where the issue is with this one, we'll let you know. But I think we'll head on into the workshop now. Well, I think that was a pass on my engine GCSE with Dave. Anyway, so in the main workshop today, we've got the lads wrestling out a KW out of this Cayman S track car. So the car's done a few seasons on this suspension, so they're going to take them out. They'll get sent back to KW for a refresher. They're all good for another track season next year. So I'll leave them to wrangle with that for a sec. We've got a 991 Gen 2 GTS up on the ramps here, which is a new sales arrival, so that particular car's new to us, so they all go through a 4-hour inspection, so Ian's busying away underneath there, making sure it passes the standard. This GT3 here is one of my favourite colours. This one's rhodium silver. We actually sold this one, I think, earlier this year, and earlier this year we then added some surface transformers brakes to it, and also we did a man tyre alignment, so it's got RS top mounts. But the car's done a few track days, so it's just back in for a health check before it gets probably tucked up for the winter, to be fair. So Neil's somewhere doing his thing on that. We've got a little Boxster GTS up on the ramp here, which is having some new radiators, so Ricky's on that. And then in the back of the workshop here, we've got a Cayman GTS It's not a GTS, it's a GT4, that's right, which had delivery mileage, and that's just going off into storage until the client's back in the UK next year, where it will get enjoyed on track again. Right, back in the sales department, but before we get on with sales, what I'm going to trial something next week is I'm going to see if I can persuade some of the other members of staff to come out on camera. There's some really cool guys and girls that work here, and there's about 23 of us in total, so it'd be good to show you some of the other faces and what they do for us. But whilst we're in the sales department, I've got my friend Alex Cooper here.
Dying of man flu, but yeah.
Yeah, stay away.
Yeah, no, it's right.
It's not COVID, he's checked.
No.
But yeah, we've had some sales since last week's video, haven't we?
Yeah, the lovely 993 we showed you last week, that's sold. Gone off to a chap who's coming out of a 997 Gen 2 GT3 and a 718 GTS Cayman, which is
Crayon one.
Yeah,
it's a
lovely,
good colour
lovely
that
colour,
was.
yeah.
Yeah, and we've had some new arrivals as well. We just obviously saw in the workshop the Crayon, not the Crayon, the Carmine GTS Gen 2 that's just being inspected by Ian.
Yeah. 991 Gen 1 RS.
The RS, that's a cool colour as well.
Very cool.
Colour always helps. Always helps.
Definitely something different.
And talking of colours, we haven't really touched on this one in any videos, but it's both of our favourites.
Yeah.
We don't have favourites,
no,
but we do.
Yeah, this one, yeah.
So what's this one?
997 Gen 2 GT3RS, so super special in itself, but it's a one owner. So one owner, 9,200 miles, but yeah, just needs to own one of these at some point. They're fabulous things.
It's so rare to find as well, because often we find someone will tell us it's a one owner car and the car will arrive and we look at the logbook and we're like, well, it's 4 owners here, but it's not. It's one of those cars. The guy picked it up from Porsche, serviced it with Porsche.
Got the original invoice for it when it was brand new. Like, yeah,
just perfect. And I don't think it's been on track. Not that that would bother us. You know, if a car's been on circuit, it's ultimately what they're for. But yeah. So if my numbers come up, I'm having it, but otherwise let's get it sold.
over it, yeah.
So hopefully you found that video interesting and informative in some places. But if there's anything that you saw that you'd like a bit more information on, pop it in the comments section and we shall see if we can cover it. And again, thanks everyone for watching. We got, I think, quadruple the amount of views we got the first week, so let's see if we can quadruple it again.
Easy.